Okay, I think I am recording. I hope so. Thanks, Lindy and Megan, for joining me. So I'm not totally talking to myself, but I'm going to record it and put it on our YouTube channel. All right, so let me go ahead and start this. And can you see my screen okay and also hear me? Sorry, will you confirm one more time that you can?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so hello everybody. Everyone meaning, hopefully we have some people who are going to view this recording. I have Megan and Lindy on with me right now. And this is the third webinar that we're doing for our weight loss challenge that's going on right now. And I am here to present about macronutrients, micronutrients, and also phytonutrients. And so you may wonder why I'm choosing to review this topic when we're talking about or when we're doing a weight management challenge. And it's my opinion that it's important to understand some nutritional concepts when you're in any sort of weight loss program and you're attempting to lose weight. You really shouldn't only be concerned with calories or what diet is going to help you lose weight, but really looking at the big picture. And so what foods are going to help you lose weight along with fight chronic disease, fight cancer risk, and aid in the normal function of metabolism and your immune system as well. Counting macronutrients can also be a weight loss strategy. However, like what was reviewed in my first webinar, you still need to create that calorie deficit in order to achieve weight loss. Ensuring adequate and appropriate micronutrient composition is important for overall health and wellness. And then we're also going to review some phytonutrients, which are important compounds that have many health and longevity benefits. And so I included this graphic again. This was also in my first webinar, just because I like this graphic. It shows you our three macronutrients. You have carbohydrates, protein, and fats. But it also starts to get you thinking about the fact that every food usually has some sort of combination of macronutrients that are in that food item. And so I like this graphic for that reason, that it gets you kind of thinking about the fact that there is protein in an apple, however, not very much protein in an apple, and there's primarily carbohydrates in an apple. Now, like what I previously mentioned, protein, carbohydrates, and fat are our three macronutrients. And some individuals have success with counting macronutrients in order to help them with weight loss. And so there's a lot of math and numbers on this slide. I'm just going over this for those of you that maybe are interested in having those numbers and doing the math. But I'm also going to talk about how to balance macronutrients without all the math. And so to start with protein, protein does have 4 calories per 1 gram. And we mentioned in the first webinar that about 20 to 30% of your calorie intake should come from protein. And that's actually considered a higher protein diet, a higher protein content. And so based on 1,500 calories per day, that would be about 75 to 112 grams of protein. Now, notice how that number is not 150 grams of protein or 200 grams of protein. For some reason, we're kind of in this trend where people think the more protein, the better. And that's not necessarily the case. And we're really going to get into that concept once we start talking about micronutrients and phytonutrients. But just 20 to 30% of your protein, of your calories should come from protein. And that should be plenty in order to help you with weight loss, but also maintain your muscle stores. For carbohydrates, carbohydrates also have 4 calories per 1 gram, and about 40 to 50% of your calorie intake should come from carbohydrates. And so some people are really surprised to hear that that many calories should come from carbohydrates, especially if we're talking about weight management. In the weight management field, carbohydrates are kind of feared a little bit. But based on a 1,500 calorie per day diet, it's 150 to 187 grams of carbohydrates per day. So that's quite a bit of carbohydrates that individuals, should be consuming. And then for fat, fat is our more calorically dense macronutrient, so 9 calories for 1 gram. Still about 20 to 30% of your calorie intake should come from fat. And so based on 1,500 calories per day, that is 33 to 50 grams per day. Now, again, a lot of numbers, a lot of math and everything. So I really like to take this and actually apply it to a day. And that is what I've done here. So let's start on the bottom where it has the calorie, protein, carbohydrates, and fat content. So I went ahead and I put together a menu for a day, and this menu has 1,491 calories, 85 grams of protein, which is 23% of that calorie intake, 190 grams of carbohydrates, which is 51% of that calorie intake, 47 grams of fat, which is 28% of that calorie intake. And I've also included the fiber as well. Lindy is actually doing a whole presentation on fiber, which I'm very excited about. But I think that fiber, I kind of group fiber in with the macronutrients, even though it's not considered a macronutrient, just because I think it's an important nutrient to kind of track and monitor throughout the day. But let's see what this macronutrient composition gives us during the day. So for breakfast, I wrote that you can have 2 egg whites with maybe 1 full egg, so you're still including 1 yolk, a half cup of bell pepper, half cup mushroom, Parmesan cheese, a slice of whole wheat Dave's Killer bread with 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. And so you have the calorie and the nutrient content underneath that meal there. For a snack, you can have a large apple and 1 string cheese. For lunch, maybe you go the convenient route and you do a can of Progresso chicken noodle soup with a cup of veggie sticks and 2 tablespoons of hummus. And then maybe you need a little sweet treat in the middle of the day. So 2 pieces of dark chocolate. For an afternoon snack, maybe you wanted a banana. Dinner, 3 ounces of chicken breast, half cup of brown rice, 1.5 cups of frozen stir-fried vegetables, and then some homemade teriyaki sauce. And I've included a little dessert there after dinner. And I just like when individuals aren't depriving themselves, by including a small amount of these sweet treats, you can really kind of make sure that you're having enjoyment by the foods that you're eating and not feeling too deprived or restricted. And so, this is kind of how this macronutrient distribution can be. This is an example of how it can be laid out throughout the day. And so, again, 190 grams of carbohydrates. Some people would think, oh my gosh, that's so many carbohydrates. But you look at this day, and then actually, it adds up pretty quick, and you get a lot of good carbohydrates from the fruits and vegetables, and then sprinkling in some whole grains in there as well. All right, so I told you all that I would also let you know how to balance macronutrients without the math. This is my preference. It's a lot easier, a lot less tracking, a lot less math, which is wonderful. And so I've included 2 pictures here, 2 graphics. On the left, you have Choose My Plate, and this is what the government has come out with trying to promote a healthy, balanced diet. And then on the right, I have the diabetes plate method. Now, the reason why I included both is because usually for the main meals of lunch and dinner, I tell individuals to kind of balance their meals utilizing the diabetes plate method because it's my personal preference to take fruit and include it in for my snacks in the middle of a day. So I'm not actually including fruit with my meals. I'm taking it out and including it maybe for breakfast and maybe for a snack. But you'll notice that really balancing out your meals and your snacks with different food groups and appropriate portion sizes of those food groups, you're really going to be promoting a nice balanced macronutrient composition. And so, I really feel bad telling people to follow the diabetes plate method for breakfast because sometimes it's not always, ideal or what people want for, vegetables for breakfast. So this is a great idea that you can take that fruit that you're not having for one of your meals and you can plug it into your breakfast meal. So you can have a protein option with fruit and a whole grain. So a nice balanced meal for breakfast. And then you can, focus on the plate method for lunch and dinner. And then also include 1 to 2 snacks. And what I've mentioned before is I always encourage a protein and a produce with your snack, just so you have that protein with that fiber mixed together to help promote feelings of fullness. And so mix it up and balance out your food groups. Follow those appropriate portion sizes. And so you'll notice that on the diabetes plate method, it's saying that half of your meals should be non-starchy vegetables. a quarter of your plate being some sort of carbohydrate food, and then a quarter of your plate being some sort of protein food. So that's what I mean by following appropriate portion sizes, is making sure that half of your plate is not that carbohydrate food, half of that plate is not your protein option. By really following this kind of guide, you're going to be balancing out those macronutrients. So just to kind of review the different macronutrients, protein, it really functions in building and repairing tissue. It's essential to generate enzymes, hormones, and other chemicals within the body. And it really helps in the development of bones, blood, muscles, cartilage, skin. So it has a lot of functions within the body. The benefits is that it helps promote feelings of fullness. It, shows that it's supportive for weight loss efforts. It can prevent metabolic slowdown during weight loss and can really preserve that muscle mass as well. During my last talk, I talked about the diet-induced thermogenesis that's created with protein intake. And then that can also help with a higher resting metabolic rate. And so just to give you all an idea of the different protein content of foods, I've highlighted the ones that are highest in protein on this list here. And so you'll have chicken breast being the highest in protein, followed by your meats, your fish, your tofu. But there's also, other forms or sources of protein as well. And so you have your dairy, your soy milk, your seeds, your nuts, your eggs, your beans. So all of those would be great sources of protein as well, and can just aid in your total protein intake for the day. All right, so I've mentioned that carbohydrates are definitely not the enemy. When you're restricting carbohydrates, you are really depriving your body of these plant-based nutrient-dense foods that have been widely researched to protect against chronic disease and cancer, lead to longevity and healthy aging, and also promote an adequately functioning immune system. And so when you're taking away those carbohydrates, like the ketogenic diet, for example, you're really, not including a lot of these foods that have so much health benefits. And we're going to talk about that when we get into micronutrients and phytonutrients. The main function of carbohydrates is to provide your body with energy, and your body needs that energy in order to think, stand, walk, run, breathe. For all the functions that your body does, it needs that energy. The main thing you want to think about with carbohydrates is that you have healthy carbohydrates and then you have unhealthy carbohydrates. And so your healthy carbohydrates will obviously be vegetables, fruits, whole grains. I've provided a small list here of different whole grain foods. Starchy vegetables, I would consider a healthy form of a carbohydrate. It's just the way that we cook them that's a little bit concerning, and that's mentioned in the unhealthy portion. Beans, legumes, lentils, dairy. The healthy carbohydrates are oftentimes called complex carbohydrates. And then with your unhealthy carbohydrates being known as refined or simple carbohydrates. So unhealthy carbohydrates are all listed here. A list that I'm sure looks familiar and that we all know, sweets and desserts, sugar sweetened beverages, white bread, white pasta, white rice, and then the deep fried starchy vegetables. And so when you're taking some potatoes and you're, mixing it with olive oil and roasting it in the oven, that is a whole different ballgame than taking potatoes, skinning them so you don't have none of the fiber from the skin of the potato, and then deep frying them in an unhealthy oil. So sometimes it's all about the cooking methods as well of what makes that carbohydrate healthy or unhealthy. So now I'll talk briefly about fat. And so the function of fat has a lot of different functions, provides the body energy, protects your organs, helps absorb specific nutrients, especially the fat-soluble vitamins, and aids in the production of hormones. You have three different types of fat. You have saturated fat, unsaturated fat, and trans fat. And I've included a small graphic here. You can kind of think that unsaturated fat is the healthy fat. Saturated fat would be unhealthy, with trans fat being the most unhealthy fats that you don't want to include. But within the unsaturated fat category, you have two primary unsaturated fats. You have MUFAs and PUFAs. And so monounsaturated fats, you can think about that they are liquid at room temperature. So think olive oil is at room temperature, it is a liquid, as compared to like vegetable shortening, which is a solid at room temperature. And so those MUFAs are liquid at room temperature, includes things like nuts, avocados, and vegetable oils. The health benefits for including those monounsaturated fats include lowering your LDL or your unhealthy cholesterol. And it's also high in vitamin E, which is a known antioxidant. And then it's not required on the nutrition label. So you're going to see on a nutrition label unsaturated fats, but it's not a requirement that food companies have to report how many monounsaturated fats are in that product. And then polyunsaturated fats are also liquid at room temperature, but it also includes different types of oil, but also walnuts and seeds. Fatty fish is a big source of those polyunsaturated fats. And then, similar health benefits to those monounsaturated fats. And your polyunsaturated fats are going to include those omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s are, pretty trendy right now. Some people take supplement forms of omega-3s, and your body really needs a balance of those omega-3s and omega-6s. And so just to kind of go back in time in history, so Senator McGovern in 1979 really came out with a report that promoted a low-fat diet that was high in carbohydrates. So back in the 70s and 80s, fat was the enemy. We were thinking that dietary fat was the reason why Americans' health were really going downhill. And so by the early 90s, there were low fat and fat free products everywhere. I mean, you go into a grocery store and there was fat free this, low fat that. But what food companies realize is that when you take all of the fat out of a product, it tastes like crap. And so then they had to replace the fat with sugar. And so then we started seeing all really high in sugar and carbohydrates because we took all the fat, all the flavor out of the product. And so then as a result, in the 80s and 90s, we had an increase in obesity and diabetes. And so obviously that's not really the trend anymore, having a low fat diet. And so it's just interesting to see the timeline there of, when these low fat diets were promoted, and then consequently what happened to the health status of Americans. All right, so that's all I was going to go over for macronutrients. I mean, we could talk about macronutrients for forever, but just wanted to provide an overview of what those macronutrients are, how to think about balancing them in your diet. But now we're going to move on to micronutrients. And micronutrients, you can think of micronutrients as vitamins and minerals. They're synonymous with one another. So whenever I say micronutrients, I am talking about vitamins and minerals. And so these micronutrients cannot be produced by the body, and so they must be consumed consumed in the diet. The only exception to this is vitamin D, and this is because our bodies can produce vitamin D through sunlight. Our skin can produce vitamin D through sunlight. And so aside from vitamin D, we have to consume all of our vitamins and minerals from the foods that we eat or supplements. And so vitamins are grouped up into two different categories. You have your water-soluble vitamins, which are your B vitamins and your vitamin C. And then you have your fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E, and K. And fat-soluble basically just means that you need these vitamins need a little bit of fat in order to adequately be absorbed in the gastrointestinal tract. And so that's why you'll see like vitamin D supplements that have a little bit of oil in their supplement, because that vitamin D needs that fat in order to be absorbed. And then your minerals, the minerals are really present in soil and water. Examples of these minerals are calcium, sodium, potassium, copper, iodine, zinc. There's many more, but those are just some examples of what those minerals are. There's about 30 vitamins and minerals that have recommended dietary allowance or adequate intakes. I'm not going to go over all of them and go over those numbers of how much we should all be having. You can Google that really easily, but also it just sounds kind of boring for me to sit here and, and just read that list to you. But there's a lot of different functions and roles of micronutrients within the body, but mostly they play a role in nutrient metabolism and tissue function. And so consumption of micronutrients, you really want to include a variety of foods and food groups. That is the best strategy to ensure consumption of essential vitamins and minerals. Fruits, vegetables, and whole grains are the food groups that are the most nutrient dense, and they're going to have a lot of these vitamins in them. A lot of B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin E. So you're really going to get a lot of vitamins if you include a lot of these plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Now, I also wanted to talk about vitamin D because a vitamin D deficiency has become really prevalent, especially in North Idaho, because the sunlight that we get is just really a poor quality. And so, and not to mention that we only get like 8 hours of sunlight during the winter months, and usually that's the time when we're all at work. So, anyways, I usually recommend a maintenance dose of vitamin D, about 1,000 IUs a day. However, if you have a deficiency, your doctor may recommend 5,000 IUs, 10,000 IUs, sometimes up to 50,000 IUs, just depending on the severity of your deficiency. If you've never been tested for vitamin D deficiency, you can ask your primary care provider if if you can get your vitamin D levels checked. It's a fairly easy test, just a blood test. And I also wanted to point out vitamin B12. So, when individuals are eating largely a plant-based diet, like being vegetarian or vegan, you really want to include a vitamin B12 supplement because the primary source of vitamin B12 is animal products in the diet. So, if you're not including as many of those, getting a vitamin B12 supplement is definitely needed. But on the topic of supplements, I usually recommend when individuals are on an active weight loss plan to consider including just a general multivitamin. Because usually, when you have a calorie deficit, you're naturally going to be lowering the consumption of micronutrients in your diet. And so, just to make sure that you are not becoming deficient in any vitamin or mineral, a general multivitamin is all that's recommended when individuals are on an active weight loss plan. But then the question becomes, do we need more than a general multivitamin? We talked about vitamin D supplement and that a lot of people probably need a vitamin D supplement. Vitamin B12 if an individual is eating a plant-based diet. Fish oil, so that's not a micronutrient, but some people do like to include a supplemental fish oil just for the overall benefits of that. And then obviously, if you have a vitamin or mineral deficiency, needing to have additional supplements can definitely be needed. I always tell individuals save your money and eat a nutrient dense diet. And so, focus on including a lot of those nutrient dense foods to get your daily doses of vitamins and minerals. Really, vitamin and mineral deficiencies are rare. And so you don't need to over supplement. You don't need to be buying all of these different vitamin and mineral supplements unless you have a deficiency that's already been identified. I have to tell a story about this one time when I was on the med surg floor of a hospital I was working at. And I was talking to one of the doctors about this laundry list of vitamin and mineral supplements that one of the patients was taking at home. And as I was going over this with the doctor looked up to me and said, "Wow, that's some really expensive urine that she has there." And I like that because it kind of proves the point that your body is going to take what it needs from supplements and then excrete the rest out. And so, save your money, eat a nutrient dense diet, include a general multivitamin if you're concerned about not getting enough of some different vitamins and minerals. But ultimately, a majority of individuals do not need additional B complex, vitamin B12, vitamin C. I mean, all of these, you can come up with a list of 10 supplements that people are regularly on. And so just maybe think about that and reconsider. It's also important to realize that supplements are not regulated. And so supplement companies can put whatever they want in that supplement. They can write anything that they want on a nutrition label, and they don't have to answer to anybody. And so I'm always very concerned from a consumer standpoint of those labels being accurate, their information and ingredient list being accurate, because there's nobody regulating them. And then also vitamin toxicity is a real thing. Individuals can really supplement too much vitamins and minerals. vitamin toxicity can range in symptoms from stomach cramping, GI upset, constipation, nausea, vomiting, skin rashes. And so obviously making sure that you're not over supplementing and creating a vitamin toxicity. All right, so phytonutrients. I'm actually very excited to talk about phytonutrients. I love talking about phytonutrients. What the heck are phytonutrients? You may have not ever heard that term before. Phytonutrients are also called phytochemicals. They have specific antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-carcinogenic properties within the body. They're compounds produced by plants that provide health benefits to the body, and they really contribute to the color, flavor, and aroma of plants. And so the primary food sources of phytonutrients in the diet are fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, beans, herbal teas, coffee. And so all of these products, all of these sources are going to be a significant source of phytonutrients and these chemical compounds that have been shown to have great health benefits. There are a lot of phytonutrients that have been identified, and only a fraction of these have ever been researched in human health. And so I'll go over a few different phytonutrients and the benefits of them, but I think we're in such the early stages of actually diving deep and researching a lot of phytonutrients. And so I think that there's a lot more health benefits that we're not aware of. And the concentrations of these phytonutrients in these plants really vary between the species of the plant and also storage and processing of the plant as well. And so to get the most phytonutrients in your diet, I recommend that individuals focus on eating the rainbow. And so you never want to just focus on one color, or if you notice that, maybe you include a lot of apples and a lot of strawberries and a lot of tomatoes and a lot of cherries, and you kind of are sticking to one color, maybe starting to get a little bit more variety would be helpful. But to go over all of the different colors and kind of taking a diver deep into each one, we know that our red fruits and vegetables are really high in a carotenoid called lycopene. And lycopene is an antioxidant that can protect against prostate cancer, heart disease, and lung disease. I've included some different food sources there: strawberries, cranberries, raspberries, tomatoes, on and on. And we know that when lycopene is heated and cooked, this actually improves the absorption and availability of lycopene. And so, cooking and heating these phytonutrients does not necessarily mean something bad. It actually can improve the availability of them. Now, orange and yellow, we know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. That's probably going to be the case for a lot of these phytonutrients because they have very complicated names, and I don't feel like embarrassing myself on here. But orange and yellow fruits and vegetables can have a phytonutrient that's really involved in the prevention of heart disease. And so carrots, sweet potatoes, yellow peppers, oranges, bananas, pineapples, tangerines, all of these orange and yellow fruits and vegetables can be a great source of that. Now, green has a few different phytonutrients present. They have been shown to be cancer-blocking chemicals, inhibit the action of carcinogens, and so really can decrease an individual's risk for the development of cancer. And a lot of those green foods, so spinach, avocados, asparagus, artichokes, broccoli, kale, cabbage, all the green fruits and vegetables can be a great nutrient-dense source of these phytonutrients. And then blue and purple, anthocyanins, they can delay cellular aging and prevent the formation of blood clots. Now, there's actually been some research shown that blackberries, out of all of the purple and blue fruits and vegetables, blackberries are the ones that have the most antioxidants in them. And so if you're interested in including a little bit more berries, maybe you start, including blackberries in that mix because of those antioxidants. And then there's even phytonutrients in white and brown fruits and vegetables that can have specific anti-tumor properties. And so onions, cauliflower, garlic, leeks, parsnips, mushrooms. And so kind of the overall message that I really wanted to get across with talking about phytonutrients is that it's more than just the vitamins and minerals and fiber and low calorie content of fruits and vegetables. They have these compounds that can just promote so much. That have so many health benefits that if you're restricting things like carbohydrates, then you're really going to be lacking and missing out on all of these wonderful health benefits if you included more of these plant-based options. And then overall goal for consumption, you can try to aim for about 4.5 cups of colorful fruits and vegetables every day. And maybe that sounds easy for some people. Maybe that sounds a little bit more challenging. And so if right now you're used to doing maybe a cup every day, maybe you start with, maybe the new goal is 2 cups. And so eventually getting up to that point, but really aiming for a nice variety of different colors of fruits and vegetables, getting really switching it up and not getting kind of just into one color or one type of fruit or vegetable all the time. Liza, our dietetic intern, did a wonderful article about phytonutrients in the last employee newsletter. And so that was in May that this was in, so you can get a little bit more information here. She reviewed the phytonutrients like beta carotene, lycopene, lutein, resveratrol, and anthocyanins. So resveratrol is the one that's really present in wine, and so in red wine specifically. And so that's a really well researched phytonutrient there. So conclusion. So for your macronutrient distribution, really just focus on balancing your food groups and using the plate method and aiming for appropriate portion sizes. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins all have necessary functions in the body. And so I really don't recommend dramatically decreasing one macronutrient, which is often encouraged for weight loss efforts, specifically with carbohydrates. I don't really recommend that. You want to have a good balance because they all have functions within the body. You want to focus on a nutrient-dense diet that includes many plant-based foods to consume adequate amounts of those micronutrients. You may consider a multivitamin if you're really decreasing your calorie intake, and then obviously having additional supplements with deficiencies. And then you also want to include a variety of plant-based foods of different colors to take advantage of the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-carcinogenic properties. And a good number to aim for is that 4.5 cups of colorful fruits and vegetables every day. So to review the upcoming webinar, so our next one will be on June 21st. That one's all about exercise and how to create behaviors that last a lifetime, and that's with Casey Richardson. Then we have July 5th, we have that webinar with Lindy that is all about fiber. And then Lindy's coming back on July 19th to talk about how to transition from a weight loss program to a weight maintenance program. So really preventing that weight regain. And then we do have these webinars that are available on our YouTube channel. I'm going to be sending out the links for these, and I'm going to include this recording on that YouTube channel today. All right, that is all I have for you. So thanks so much for joining me, and I am going to stop the recording.
Thanks, Laurie. That was great.
Bye.